One time, I went to the bar with one of my friends. I had just turned 21, so I hadn't been to many bars at that point. My friend was drinking on the way to the bar, so he was already pretty drunk when we got there. When I sat at the bar, a cute girl came and talked to me and my friend. She said her name was Candace, and I noticed she had really bright red hair. I assumed she dyed it. It was pretty, but a bit unnatural. Anyways, this girl was flirting a lot with me and my friend. She could tell my friend was already pretty drunk. To be honest, I played along like I was drunk already too, since it seemed to be working for my friend. I didn't know if she was just trying to get free drinks, so I told her we didn't have much money. She offered to buy us drinks. She kept buying us drinks, and I started to get confused as to who she liked between me and my friend. My friend went to the bathroom, but before he came back, he was kicked out by the bouncers for being too drunk. Candace and I went outside with him. She kept telling him to come home with her, but he was so out of it that he could barely answer her. I told her he was a bit too drunk and that I couldn't let him go anywhere. I didn't want him to wake up hungover in some random house with no car and no idea what happened. Candace kept pushing it, saying that she would take care of him, but I told her no because I had to stay with him. I was more sober than him, so he was my responsibility. I told her the only way he was going anywhere was if I tagged along. I assumed she thought that I was jealous or cock-blocking, but my friend could barely stand on his own and had lost interest in Candace already at that point. She immediately started flirting with me and offered to get my friend a taxi to drive him home. She said we could go to her place alone. At this point I had had a few drinks and I was pretty buzzed, so I agreed readily. We took my friend to the taxi and walked to her car. I stumbled slightly while on the way to her car. "Wow, you're pretty drunk, huh?" she said, smiling as she held onto my arm. I couldn't do anything but just say yeah. I don't know why, but I just felt slightly shy and anxious. Everything was happening a bit too easily for me, so I felt really uneasy. We got in our car and we drove down the street. "You want to stop at the liquor store and get some more to drink? I'll buy it, so don't worry about paying," she offered. I didn't want to drink any more than I already did. I was pretty buzzed and wanted to be able to carry myself throughout the rest of the night. Sometimes I made myself look stupid when I'm drunk, so I didn't want to ruin anything with Candace more than I already did earlier, with telling her my friend was too drunk. I told her I was already drunk enough, but she insisted. I didn't want to seem lame, so I told her to get me a pint of liquor with some apple juice to chase it. She went into the store and came out with a lot more than just a pint. I assumed she wanted to drink more also, and that's why she got a fifth instead of a pint. On the car ride, we passed the bottle back and forth, but she just took tiny sips. I tried to take tiny sips as well, but she kept passing the bottle to me and telling me to drink a lot. I somehow managed to drink all of my apple juice and pretend to drink the bottle by spitting the liquor back into the apple juice bottle. I tossed the apple juice bottle full of liquor out the window before she could see it. I didn't want her to know I was acting drunker than I was. She actually believed I was a sloppy drunk when I was actually just a little buzzed. I took a couple more sips of liquor and finished off the bottle. Throughout the car ride, I called her the wrong name a couple of times, just to try and get a reaction out of her. She didn't react to it, though. She just kept letting me call her Carla without correcting me. For some reason, I thought she lied to me about her name initially. We drove up to her house, and I pretended to trip and stumble into her front door. She helped me walk inside by holding me up. She opened her front door, which was unlocked, and we walked into her house. She closed her front door immediately and then locked it. I thought it was a bit strange, but assumed she didn't want anyone walking in on us. I told her immediately that I had to use the bathroom. I walked into her bathroom, locked the door, and looked into the mirror. I don't know, I just felt strange. It felt like something was off. I felt myself becoming more drunk from finishing the bottle earlier. I turned on the sink to make some noise and make myself puke up the liquor I had drunk. I flushed and went to the sink and started drinking the tap water out of my hands to sober up. I just didn't want to be drunk, but I still wanted to hook up with Candace, so I wanted to pretend to be. I turned the sink off and I could hear her talking to someone in the background. He's drunk as hell. He can barely stand up. You do it. Who was she talking to? And do what? I walked out of the bathroom and into the living room. The moment I stepped into the living room, I saw her walking into another room. All I could see was the back of her head, that very strange bright red hair going into another room. I didn't see her face or anything. I just saw her kind of weirdly walk fast into the room. The living room itself was pretty dark. "Hey, where are you going?" I slurred like I was drunk. She walked back into the dark living room and up to me. "Let's go into my room," she said. I looked at her bright red hair and then into her eyes. They were different. Her face was different. It was another girl with the same hair. That's when I realized it was another girl with the same wig on. It had been a wig the whole time. She had changed it with the girl from earlier for whatever reason. My heart felt like it stopped, but I tried to look like I had no idea it was a different girl. I kind of smiled at her and told her I just needed to use the bathroom one more time and told her sorry that I was so drunk. She said, "It's fine, just hurry it up in there." I went into the bathroom and locked the door. I could hear her whispering something to someone again this time, and I think I heard a male voice whisper back. I honestly didn't concentrate on listening to exactly what she said. Something sketchy was going on, and I knew I had to get out of that house. I opened the bathroom window up all the way and jumped straight out of it. I ran faster than I've ever ran in my life. I didn't look behind myself or anything. I just ran through the backyard, jumped the fence and ran through someone else's backyard, hit the road and ran toward the main road. I kept running down the main road until I saw a Star CVS and I ran into it. I stood straight at the front of the store in front of the camera. I called a taxi and they drove me home. I tried to think about what happened that night. What was she or they planning? Why did she tell me a fake name? And why was she trying to get my friend and I so drunk? I thought maybe robbery, but she kept spending money on us. She kept buying us drinks and even paid for my friend's taxi cab. And mostly, why did she wear that wig that she gave to another girl to wear? Who was she talking to? What did it mean? And what was in that room they tried to lure me into? I grew up in an extremely small Texas town until the age of 13, where all the childhood memories I have are from. My dad lived in Austin and picked me up every other weekend, holidays and during the summer, so I knew there was another world out there, but this was my home, and this was what I was familiar with. As you can imagine, in a small town, we're talking 393 people worth of population. Everyone knew everything about everyone. There was petty crime like drug use and the occasional peeping Tom, but that person was well known to the public by everyone in the town soon after the event. You got away with nothing if someone else knew about it. Let me mention, because this is a small town, because this small town was surrounded by larger small towns, we were hardly even considered a school district. K through 12th grade in one school. Barely 1A, and if you're from Texas, you know what I mean. We didn't even have a real stoplight, and to this day I still don't even know if they do. Only one gas station that was closed about half of the time, and even no grocery store. So, this town had a voluntary fire department, but no actual police. That's right, none. You'd call and get the next town over's police, which were in the same county, so they considered themselves to be our police, but they were located about 20 miles away. 20 miles to drive to an emergency call. So in my late childhood, at around 10, we heard about this handyman named Kyle. A middle-aged big guy who everyone worked with, who had inappropriately touched a couple of kids in the town. One of them being my next-door neighbor, a teenage girl whose dad considered Kyle his brother. We all knew what he looked like, and felt some type of shame for being so naive and nice, because everyone had met or knew him thought nothing negative. I even felt safety around him at one point. Those 2 occasions happened over a year's worth of time, and we hadn't seen him around since the news came out and the kids came forward. He creeped us out, and every adult in the community shunned him. Adios, Kyle. Flash forward 3 years. I'm in the 6th grade now, and one of my schoolmates' parents have asked my mom if their 2 daughters can stay on a school night, because they had to go to a court date very early in the morning and needed to prepare. It was no problem, as my mom was a single parent and very understanding. My mom is a very sweet person, with hardly any boundaries because she's so understanding, which gets her in trouble, but it's also nice to have in a parent. We played outside in the neighborhood most of the day, and came back to set up my room for 3 beds, where my mom would be getting dinner ready. When we got back, we noticed my mom seemed like she was going somewhere, or had left and come back, which was unusual. There wasn't really anywhere to go, but then I noticed she was drunk. Heavily drunk. How long had we been gone? The sun had just gone down, so maybe 2 hours at most. A little backstory. My mom is tiny. 5'1" and 120 pounds. She never drank in my childhood, and when she did, it was extremely noticeable. Glassy eyes, slurring, wandering eyes, anger, lying, and making no sense. But I could only name a handful of times that it happened, and when it did, she had had 1 beer. Anytime I saw her with this beer, I would get mad, because I knew she wouldn't be normal. She rarely did this, so I remember almost every tantrum I threw. That's why this wasted behavior made no sense, but I knew it was alcohol. I was immediately embarrassed. My poor friends had to see this mess. I herded them straight into my room, where we got ready for our school day the next morning and tucked ourselves in without any dinner. I knew they must be hungry, so I sat there wide awake, thinking about what we could make the next morning to make up for it. The only light in the room was glowing from the doorframe that faced the kitchen. I guess my mom must be in there, but all we heard was shuffling around. Then my friend shook my leg from her pallet and said, "Zoe, did you hear that man?" I laid there frozen. Worry hit the pit of my stomach, and I quickly remembered that I hadn't heard my mom in over an hour. Had she left after we arrived? Did she drive her car that drunk? Is she back? I listened closely, my ears ringing from being so alert. I heard a woman's laugh trying to be quiet, but obviously failing, like a teenage girl sneaking around the house from her parents. I could tell that it was my mom, but the male's voice who came after is what threw a lump in my throat. It was so familiar, and I listened even closer. The next sentence I heard sent me into a full-body tingle. My head went hot, and I could hear my heartbeat, even feel it in my ears. The man said, "So there's 3 of them in there. She's having a sleepover?" I jumped out of the bed and leaped to my bedroom door, telling my friends to stay put. I crept out to the hallway and grabbed the house phone from its stand. I turned to the kitchen and took a deep breath before I ran full force into the middle of them in the kitchen, physically pushing my mom behind me and me in between the 2. It was Kyle. I stared him in the face and screamed in the only voice my 13-year-old body could muster, "Get the fuck out of my house!" He stumbled back surprised and obviously very drunk himself. My mom came full force behind me, pulling me back, but luckily at this age I was 5'5" already and easily her weight. I had her taken. Other than the stumble, he hadn't moved at all. I stared right at his face and dialed 911. Before I hit talk, I screamed again. "Get the fuck out of my house now, or I'll call the cops. My friend's parents are already on the way." They weren't, but that's all I could think of at the time. All I could think about was the fact that my mom was on the edge of blackout or passing out. The way she could hardly keep her eyes open and couldn't stand upright. And now there's this town-known child molester in my kitchen who knows there are 3 early teen girls in the next room sleeping. I wasn't about to let this guy be here if my mom passed out and were left alone. He stared at me for a moment, and I instinctively hit talk. We all heard the phone ring once, and he took me seriously and ran off. I knew my mom was about to rage, so I ran after him, but toward the bathroom and locked myself in. The house was less than 800 square feet, so I saw him run out the front door as I made it into the bathroom in under 5 seconds. I told the operator the situation while shaking and crying, pleading with her to send help. I wasn't thinking of the trouble my mom would get in, just wanting to help and keep my friends safe. I had no idea if he would return. The operator said help was on the way, but they disconnected. They took 3 hours to arrive, and my friend's parents were already there trying to talk my mom down. The rest of the evening was horrendous while we waited for their parents. I think they eventually caught him for a crime in another town, but I have no idea where he came from that night or why my mom picked him up. My mother could not retell you the night to this day because she was so intoxicated at the time. This night, unfortunately, was the kickoff of a 3-year blackout my mom had from alcoholism. It wasn't there. Then one day it was, and it tore my family apart. My mom lost 3 years of her life, and those are 3 years I wish I never had to live through. But it made us who we are today, and I guess I wouldn't change that for the world. This was one of many scary situations my mom put me through, but I think bucking up to a pedophile at 12 was probably the one I'll always remember. This happened almost a year ago, and it's all thanks to my little shit of a husky. She was a super cute 10-pound fluff ball at the time this happened. I was living in a pet-friendly apartment complex, and I had just bought her. I'd picked her up at around 10 a.m. that morning, and went to visit my parents' house so they could meet her. I stayed all day and didn't arrive home until 8 or 8:30 p.m. We walked in and I introduced her to the apartment, played with her a bit, took her to the bathroom, and went to bed. During the night, she woke me up twice to pee, and whined a bit since she was in a brand new environment. She wasn't too loud, though, and I quickly calmed her down by putting her on my bed. She crawled on my head and fell asleep. Since I read that huskies are very active dogs, I decided to take her on her first walk on the sidewalk beside the building. As we started our walk, we passed the side of the building that shows the balconies. I lived on the 3rd floor, and the guy who lives directly below me was standing on his balcony, filming me on his phone. I felt a bit weird about it, but I didn't think too much about it, since the landlord has actually told me before he mentioned to her that he enjoyed me living above because I was quiet. Also, a lot of the tenants in the complex were having a fit over my husky, and would hold her and pet her whenever they saw her, so I thought he was just filming her to show to his friends, or maybe talk about her later with me. I spent the whole day with her, and getting her familiar with me in her new home. Night rolls around and I took her out before I went to bed at around 11:30. I walked past a red car that was running, but didn't have its lights on, so I couldn't see who was in the car. I didn't think much about it, because it wasn't unusual for people to sit in their cars waiting for someone. I lived right beside a college, and had many college students living in the building, so I thought maybe they were waiting for someone so they could head off to a party or something. While I didn't think too much of it, I was still aware of my surroundings since I'm a young woman alone at night. My puppy finally used the bathroom after around 20 minutes of sniffing around, and I picked her up and walked past the car to go inside. The driver's side suddenly opens, and a tall man steps out and yells, "Are you allowed to have that dog?" almost aggressively. I turned around and noticed it was my neighbor, and replied, "Oh yeah, you're allowed to have dogs here." I was confused as to why he was asking that, since he's lived here longer than me, but I answered him anyways. He points at my dog. "No, you dumb bitch. Did you get permission from the landlord to have that thing?" As soon as he cursed at me, I clenched the dog closer to my chest and nodded, still confused and now a bit frightened. "Seriously? I know you're lying, bitch. You don't have permission. I videotaped you this morning and sent it to the landlord, and she said she had no clue about her." I know he's lying, because I did tell her about my dog. I just hadn't paid the deposit yet since it was the weekend, and she had told me she was fine with that. I explained this to him, but he cursed at me more, calling me a lying bitch, and how we kept him up all day and night with her running around and stomping. I know that was impossible, because a dog of this size can't stomp or make noise to keep him up at night. She hasn't barked or howled once, and just whines a little at times, but that's not loud enough to keep him up all night, especially since I was asleep right next to her, and I slept fine. I finally interrupted and apologized to cut the convo short, because he was getting more angry as time went on. He pauses and says, "Shut the fuck up. You don't mean that. I'm calling the landlord tomorrow to report you and your dog. I swear if she keeps me up again tonight, I'll fuck you and her up, bitch." I freeze at that point because I know he'll mean it. Even though we never had any problems until that day, I've heard him harassing other neighbors and even pulled out a gun on one over their dogs. However, because he's buddy-buddy with the landlord, as in doing drugs and probably sex, he's never gotten in trouble. Despite being scared, my dumbass suddenly gets pissed off for being threatened for no reason, and I stammered out, "I have permission to have this dog, so I'll be there with you tomorrow when you try to report me. You're lying and upset because you hate dogs, even though you live in a pet-friendly apartment. That was a pretty stupid move on your part." Yeah, I know, I was stupid, and the words just came out of my mouth. Suddenly the passenger slings open, and a woman steps out and shouts, "Just go before we beat your ass. I ain't gonna do shit tomorrow but get rid of that damn dog." I didn't know there was someone else in his car, as I was standing closer towards the driver's side. My fear completely took over, and I ran away and into the building. I was on the second floor landing when I hear the lobby doors slam, and footsteps pounding up the stairs. I let out a scream and hurry up to the third floor, down the hallway and into my apartment. I locked all the locks and put my door stopper against the doorknob. From outside my window, closer towards the end of the hall, I heard laughter, and then they walked away. I locked myself in my bedroom and cuddled my puppy as I cried. I stayed up all night, afraid they would try to break in and kill me and my dog. The next day I called my mom to pick me up, and didn't come back until 2 weeks later when I moved out. I brought all of my male cousins for extra protection that day. In the end, I had to move back in with my parents, because I'm afraid to be out on my own now. But I ended up getting my deposit and last month's rent back. I never reported the couple because I didn't know their names, and just didn't want to be involved with them anymore. I also felt discouraged because my landlord practically took his side, and rushed the process for me to leave. She quickly gave me my money back if I didn't involve her boss or the police. After that day, I learned she wasn't the landlord but merely the apartment manager. Looking back, I wonder if I could have sued. What is up, guys? Blue Spooky here as always. I just wanted to thank you guys so much for watching, especially if you made it this far to the end of the video. I have a little bit of an update here for you guys. I've recently started streaming a little bit on Twitch. I don't know if you guys are interested in just hanging out and seeing a bit of gameplay of maybe Monster Hunter or some games like that, maybe a few horror games, but I'll leave a link to my Twitch in the description of the video below. As always, if you guys like the video, please leave a comment or perhaps like or subscribe if you feel so inclined. If you'd like to message me, or you'd like to send in a story for me to read, or you have a suggestion for a story I should read, the links to all of my social media will be in the description of the video below as well. This includes my Facebook, Twitter, Gmail, and now, of course, my Twitch account. Go ahead and send me a message on any of those, and I'll try to get back to you as soon as possible, but please guys be patient, because I do get a lot of messages, so if I don't respond to you right away within like a week or two, just be a little patient. I'll get to it as soon as I can. If you do decide to send in a story, please be sure to include in the description of the email or message what the name of the story is, what the category of the story is, and how you would like to be credited in the video that the story appears in. If you guys are curious about the music used in this video, links to the music and the order in which the music appears will always be in the description below the video, so you can go ahead and check that out there. Last but not least, if you guys do enjoy my content, please take a look at my Patreon, and if you feel so inclined, maybe donate like $1 or something. Every little bit helps. It'll never be necessary, but of course, it's always an option if you guys would like to support the channel. Thank you guys so much for watching, and I hope you guys have a wonderful day.